Welcome to Literary Libations with Librarians. This time we are sharing some romance reads because August is Read a Romance Month. As we share our titles, if you'd like to get your hands on any of them, there are several ways to go about doing that. The first and probably the easiest is to simply contact your local branch of the Monroe County Library System and speak to the staff there. Some of our titles are available in physical versions, hardcover, paperbacks, audiobooks on CD, and those are requestable through our online catalog, and the web address for that is on your screen now. Some of our titles you'll see are available through Libby or Hoopla, and those are digital platforms that provide downloadable ebooks or audiobooks, so you can access those through your device. And the great thing, particularly about Hoopla, is if it has a lightning bolt next to the title, and almost all of the titles on Hoopla have lightning bolts, it means that there is never a wait and that you and all of your friends can check out the same item at the same time. My name is Jennifer Graneski, and I am the area supervisor for the Dundee and Mabee and Petersburg branches. And our introductory question for this week is, what would be your ideal romantic date? And it's Friday, people. And honestly, my ideal date would be like, let's take a nap, get some delivery, and watch a movie on Netflix. That would, particularly the napping portion. I am glad it's Friday. But it's been a busy work week, and I would be thrilled if my significant other called and said, listen, I got takeout ready. When you get home from work, you go take a 2-hour nap. When you wake up, we're going to watch a movie and have some takeout together. Maybe pet the dog. And my child happens to be out of town with family right now. So that is why I'm not mentioning him. So he's actually not home. So he's already gone. So that would be my, ideal romantic
yours
date.
Is doable.
This
could happen.
This could happen. I mean, so creative, but yet so, manageable. It's something that could happen. So there we go. There's my romantic heart revealed. Also with us this week is Jen McCarty, who is the circulation manager at our Ellis branch. And what would your ideal romantic date be, Jen?
I'm hoping that Stephanie and Jessica have, some really banging romantic dates, because honestly, I'm at the point in my life where someone else is just watching my children and I get to go out to dinner, at a nice restaurant I'm in. That's all I need. Not even a nice restaurant. Take me to Carrabba's and I'm done. This is fancy. There are no crayons at the table right now. So yeah, moms with younger kids, we are very, very easy to please in the romance department. Just watch my kids for me. And I'm good. Romance is on.
There. Thank you, Jen. I'm there with you. Also with us this week is Stephanie Winterstein, who is our Youth Services Coordinator for the Monroe County Library System. And you can see her doing children's programming at our Ellis and Ida branches. And what would your ideal romantic date be, Stephanie?
Well, normally I would say today is the perfect day because the weather is nice. So just sitting on our back patio, spending some time together, maybe having a glass of wine. But I'm a little spoiled this week because we actually just went away for a couple of nights with no children.
Hey.
And we literally got back a couple hours ago. So that was amazing. It wasn't romantic to say, because my husband is not romantic unless you consider riding bicycles and hiking and, but just spending time together without our 3 teenage children being needy.
No.
So, but no, we do okay, just trying to find time together. So I suppose as long as we can do that every once in a while, we're doing all right.
Nice. Yep. Like you said, just spending time together, not having all the regular day-to-day distractions.
Yeah.
Is nice. Thank you, Stephanie. And also with us this week is Jessica Otto, our head of collections. And what would your ideal romantic date be, Jessica?
I really thought hard about this one. And I think truthfully, my absolute perfect date with my husband would be if we could just recreate our very first date from 17 years ago and have dinner at Applebee's and then go to the Sundance Kid Drive-In movie theater in Ohio, where we went and saw The Wedding Crashers. I'm sure they're not playing that anymore. We'd have to pick another movie. But yeah, I think that was just something fun and simple, and yeah, that would be mine.
Oh, well, that's nice and creative. Although I have to say, I feel like all of us are like, we're pretty easy to please. Just give us some time together and we're good. That's what romance is, some time together. So, all right, well, let's go ahead and jump into our romance reads. And I'll ask Stephanie if she would get us started.
Oh, good. So normally romance that's what I tend to read the most for some reason, either, maybe with a little murder mystery thrown in. And honestly, I haven't had a lot of time to read too much, but I actually just read both of these and they fell into the category. So yay.
Nice.
The first one that I read, I have to remember here, is Rainy Day Friends by Jill Shalvis. I've never read any of her books before, and I just kind of saw it on the shelf and thought it looked good. But it was. I pretty much read it in about 7 hours on a road trip, so that was helpful. It definitely kept my attention. So in this story, Lainey is kind of moving on with her life. Her husband had died, and as hard as that was, once he died and passed away, she found out that he had several other wives who were kind of coming out of the woodwork trying to collect life insurance money and that sort of thing. So she ended up trying to start over her life. She took a job at a winery run by the Capriati family. And the Capriatis are like this really close family who, as soon as they meet you, they sort of take you in and make you feel like one of them. But she had trust issues, obviously, from her marriage and all the things that she'd found out. So she really wasn't letting anyone in. It was just like an internship. She was just going to be there for 6 weeks. Well, she met Mark Capriati, who is the oldest son who works at the winery. And he was like an Air Force veteran whose wife just up and left him while he was overseas. As soon as he came back from overseas, excuse me. And he had 2 daughters. So basically she left all of them. And while he was kind of, he had interest in her, she was like, nope, like, not going to do it. But she kept kind of being taken in, especially by his girls and all these things. And all these, she's basically started to like trust again. And there's a lot of things that happen. But basically, little by little, he gets her to sort of see how things can be. And he didn't want, one of his rules too, even though he had interest in her, was that he wasn't going to get in a relationship until his girls were grown because they'd been left. Like, he wasn't going to let that happen. So it's kind of like he didn't want that to happen. She didn't want that to happen, but they were attracted to each other. So I recommend reading it. There's a lot of little twists in there, especially when there was another woman who came to work at the winery who was only 21 years old. She showed up pregnant. She ended up being one of the wives. She was coming to collect some money. But she didn't let Lainey know who she was. So there's a little story there, which isn't romantic, but there's just lots of little intricate bits and pieces to the story that really made me enjoy it. So that's one that I recommend you checking out. And then the other one that I'm going to talk about is The Summer of Broken Rules by K.L. Walther. It's actually a YA book. And I have not read a lot of YA books lately, but I really enjoyed it. So Meredith's family has been going to Martha's Vineyard for years, but this time they were there for a wedding, and it was really hard for Meredith to go back there this year because her sister had passed away like a year, like the prior year. And that was always a very special place for them. And it was really difficult, but she, needed to go back for this wedding. Well, while she was on her way to the island, or I guess it's not an island, I don't even know. But while she was on her way to Martha's Vineyard, she was on the ferry. It must be because she was on the ferry, and she accidentally, I know what it was. Her boyfriend. She was talking to her ex-boyfriend on the phone, and he had broken up with her like 2 weeks before the wedding, and so she was not very happy with him. They dated a long time, and when she got upset, when she hung up the phone, she accidentally put her arm out and punched somebody. And he had this big bruise, but she had a hat on, so she just kind of took off and pretended that she didn't, maybe he didn't see her. Well, when she gets to Martha's Vineyard, to the where the wedding was, she sees somebody with the bruise, and of course, that is the person that she sort of gets into a relationship with, but was trying not to. Again, what happens in the story is they took the wedding week and made it into a game of assassin, which I've never heard of assassin before, but it sounds really super cool. So everybody gets a name of somebody that they're going to target with squirt guns, and you can sneak up on them in any way possible. It just couldn't be in the house during the wedding, or there was one other thing. And then as you kill somebody, then that person has to give you the next person that they had. So they're out of the game. I don't know. I'd really like to play this if I had enough people, because I think it's super fun. Needless to say, she made a little pact with her friends that had been there for years. This is a game that they played. But it was always her sister's favorite game. So this made it real tricky, and her sister always won. So she was trying to make her sister proud. Well, the problem comes in when she starts falling for this guy, and they become each other's targets. And he was trying to, form a little pact with her, but it's how do you do that and still win? And, so it was just really fun. Like I said, I'm up for a good game of assassin, but that would be romance to me. Hey, let's have a little game of this. Let's see who's gonna come out on top. It's something you can do together. Perfect fun, right? But needless to say, there's a lot more to the story. But it's just a fun little twist on, and a good summer read. So I would recommend it as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Stephanie. And yeah, I would be down for some assassin. Apparently there's a couple, I don't know, on YouTube, my husband showed it to me, that they surprise each other with confetti cannons. Yes. In the weirdest places, and he records it and she records it whenever they do it. And I told my husband, no.
That would be messy to clean up, so I don't know about confetti.
No.
I like the idea,
Yes, the whole game thing, that would be fun.
Right.
So no to confetti cannons, yes to squirt guns, and this sounds like an all MCLS bonding activity.
There we go. Oh,
Ooh.
Next step.
Somebody needs to talk to the Fun at Work committee for the next all staff day that we get to do in person.
And we film it get our highlights, put it on YouTube. Monroe County
Yeah,
Library
there we
System,
go.
having a good time.
It could be
There we
Nerf guns.
go. Yes, I
Done.
like it.
Next
Done.
meeting
Done.
planned.
Happening.
Done and done.
All right. And Jessica, will you go ahead and share your romantic titles with us next?
Surely. So I have two classic romance titles for you today. The first is Emma by Jane Austen. First published in 1815, this book centers around 21-year-old Emma Woodhouse, who lives with her aging father at their estate, Hartfield, approximately 16 miles outside of London, England, in a little town called Highbury. As the story begins, Emma finds herself lonely and missing her former governess turned dear friend, Miss Taylor, who recently left Hartfield when she just earlier that day married Mr. Weston. Although Emma is sad that Miss Taylor is no longer living at Hartfield, she finds much joy in the fact that she was the one who made the match between Miss Taylor and Mr. Weston that led to their happily ever after. Despite the success of Emma's first attempt at matchmaking, Emma's father and her good friend and confidant, Mr. Knightley, both implore her not to make any more matches. Mr. Knightley goes so far as to say that interfering with the love lives of others will just do more harm for Emma than it will do good for anyone else. Emma promises them that she's not going to make a match for herself because, after all, she sees no need for love or marriage in her own life. However, she declares that matchmaking for others is the greatest amusement in the world. In fact, Emma tells her father and Mr. Knightley that she is set on finding a match for Mr. Elton, the local vicar who has lived in Highbury for a whole year and has fitted up his house so comfortably that it would be a shame to have him single any longer. What follows is a series of comedic mishaps, misinterpretations, and misunderstandings that lead to consequences that Emma never saw coming. Will Emma succeed in finding matches for the single inhabitants of Highbury, or will her heart lead her to the one man worthy of her love? Before beginning this classic work, Jane Austen wrote of her impending novel, "I am going to take a heroine whom no one but myself will much like." The fact that this book has been republished several times, including a recent 200th anniversary annotated edition by Penguin Classics and adapted to the screen no less than 6 times, shows that Emma is actually one of Austen's most beloved characters. Emma is a delightful work with an imperfect yet charming heroine. This novel of youthful exuberance and gradual self-knowledge is a brilliant, sparkling comic masterpiece. I highly recommend it to fans of other works of Jane Austen and to fans of historical romance. If you are seeking a cute, fun, feel-good, clean romance, Emma is just the book for you. My second title is an entirely different kind of classic. Lady Chatterley's Lover is the last novel of the English author D.H. Lawrence. Set against the backdrop of a world recovering from the devastation of World War I, this work is a romance like no other. The book opens with Lady Constance Chatterley and her husband, Sir Clifford Chatterley, returning home to his family's estate, Ragby, in the autumn of 1920. Clifford spent 2 years in the care of doctors after he was wounded in the Great War. Although he has been cleared to return home to life at Ragby, Clifford will forever be paralyzed from the waist down. Sensing his wife's unhappiness in their marriage and knowing that he will never be able to provide her with a child, Clifford encourages Connie to have a liaison with another man of their own social class. Instead, Connie finds herself drawn to her husband's gamekeeper, Oliver Mellors. The two commence a passionate affair that brings new life to Connie's lonely existence. As her love for Mellors grows, Connie realizes she is no longer satisfied to live her life trapped in an unhappy marriage. She wonders if she can find true happiness with Mellors, despite the vast gulf between their positions in society. A lyrical work of romance and powerful depiction of adult relationships, Lady Chatterley's Lover is also one of the most important romance novels ever written. Although published privately in Italy in 1928 and France in 1929, Lawrence wasn't able to find a mainstream publisher willing to print an unexpurgated version of his final novel. While mild by contemporary standards, this book was initially considered too obscene for publication and banned in several countries, including the United States and Canada. It was not until 1960 that Penguin published the first uncensored version of the book in the United Kingdom. Despite the book selling 200,000 copies on its first day of publication, the United Kingdom took Penguin to trial in the fall of 1960 for publishing the book, claiming they were in violation of the Obscene Publications Act of 1959. Now, the prosecutor at the trial, Mervyn Griffith Jones, he started out the trial with what could possibly be the worst opening argument of all time, when he asked the jury, "Is this a book that you would even wish your wife or your servants to read?" Now, this was not 1760. This was not even 1860. This was 1960. And having servants was really no longer a common practice in the household. So trial spectators, and more importantly, the jury, took this question as a sign of just how out of touch not just the prosecutor, but the quote unquote establishment was with everyday life in Britain. After 6 days of testimony, 35 witnesses for the defense, and 3 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a unanimous verdict of not guilty. The trial's outcome became a watershed moment in British literary and social history, and an important victory for freedom of expression, which helped to transition publishing into a more modern era. In 1961, Penguin published a second edition, which contained this special dedication from the publisher. For having published this book, Penguin Books was prosecuted under the Obscene Publications Act 1959 at the Old Bailey in London from 20 October to 2 November 1960. This edition is therefore dedicated to the 12 jurors, 3 women and 9 men, who returned a verdict of not guilty, and thus made D.H. Lawrence's last novel available for the first time in the United Kingdom. That edition then went on to sell over 3 million copies. In addition to its literary significance, the book has been adapted for the screen several times, including a 1993 miniseries version on the BBC, which was directed by Oscar-nominated director Ken Russell. It starred Jolie Richardson as Lady Chatterley and Sean Bean as Oliver Mellors. And I also just learned this week when I was doing some research for filming that they actually are going to be releasing a brand new film version of the book on Netflix later this year. So the fact that this book continues to influence our popular culture shows how important of a work this really is. Now, tragically, D.H. Lawrence passed away very young in 1930 at age 44, and he never got to see the powerful impact that his novel had on not just British society, but the entire publishing world. I highly recommend this work to, of course, fans of Lawrence's other works and to those who enjoy historical romances. The book literally helped bridge the publishing industry into the modern world and shifted views on major human rights issues. It is a worthy addition to your romance reading list.
Thanks, Jessica. I had no idea about any of that. And I don't remember how old I was when I first picked up Lady Chatterley's Lover. But needless to say, I was young enough that I was like, I don't know what's going on. And I did not finish it. so there we go. Yeah. There's my Lady Chatterley's Lover story for everyone. So thank you, Jessica. That was very interesting. And let's have Jen share her romance titles with us.
Okay, both of mine are return authors. So for me, so if you are a long time watcher, listener of Literary Libations with Librarians, you've probably heard me talk about both of these authors before, and I'm going to do it again. So my first book is 20s Girl by Sophie Kinsella. And this book features our main character, Laura Langton, who is kind of most of Sophie Kinsella's characters, a little bit lost. She has started a new business with her supposed best friend, and the best friend totally ghosts her, disappears, leaves town, and she's left kind of floundering. And at the meantime, her great aunt has passed away. And while she is at her great aunt's funeral, she sees this young woman kind of throwing a fit. There's no one else at this funeral except Laura and her pretty much immediate family, and quickly realizes that this other young woman who's dressed kind of oddly is also a ghost or is a ghost of her great aunt Sadie. And Sadie quickly realizes that Laura is the only one that can see her and hear her, and kind of decides she's going to haunt Laura until she finds her necklace. This is her goal. She wants Laura to help her find this particular necklace. Why is she not being buried with it? Who has her necklace? Where did her necklace go? Doesn't really remember the significance of the necklace, but knows she has to have it. So Sadie was a 20-something in the 1920s. She's dressed of this era. Even though she's passed away, this book came out in 2010, I believe, 2009. Or actually, no, it might have been later than that. I'm looking at my notes. No, 9, I was right. She obviously passed away as a fairly old woman, but her ghost is 20-something. She starts basically, while they're looking for this necklace, she's kind of making Laura live out some of her fantasies. So she gets her to kind of dress like a 20s person, and she teaches her how to dance like the Charleston and that sort of stuff. She also convinces her to go on a date with this young man, and kind of is like, no, this is my date. You're going to do all the stuff that I tell you to do. I don't care if you like this guy, but I like this guy. I don't care that I'm a ghost who, hasn't been 20 in a long time. But of course, this young man that the ghost Sadie kind of fancies, Laura finds herself fancying too. And on the search for this mysterious necklace, we learn a ton about Sadie. We learn a lot about what she went through, and Laura starts to kind of learn a little bit more about herself, including obviously dating. It's a romance book. So, the young business guy that her aunt makes her date really weirdly becomes, obviously important. But she, kind of figures out her business, and Sadie really helps Laura find herself while they're figuring out what happened to this necklace, what's the mystery here, and also how can Laura's life be better. Just super fun, super funny. All the visuals of this girl basically being haunted by her aunt that no one else can hear, obviously no one else can see. She's making her dress like 1920s. She's convincing her to do the Charleston, definitely not normal behavior in 2009, but super funny, super fun. This is probably one of my favorite Sophie Kinsella books that I've read in a while. So 20s Girl, very good time. My second choice is by another author that I really like, Patricia Briggs, and this one is called Cry Wolf. This is technically the first book in the Alpha and Omega series, but I will tell you kind of a little caveat. These characters are introduced in a short story collection called On the Prowl. There's a story in there called Alpha and Omega that introduces these characters. You don't have to read the short story, but this book picks up directly after the events of the short story. So it helps. Thankfully, we have the short story collection in our system. So if this is a book you're interested in, I would recommend you start there. It's not very long, but it definitely gives you a better feel for where you start in Cry Wolf. So as I said, if you are a listener of Literary Libations, you may have remembered me talking about the Mercedes Thompson series. This book is set in the same universe. It has mentions of some of the characters that are in that series. You do not need to read that series to follow this story. But if you like that series, I think these are really good to read as well, because it's the same world. There's some of the same characters kind of come in and out, but it's a totally different series. And this one is definitely a little bit more romantic. So our main character here is Anna. In the short story, we find out that Anna has been turned a werewolf, and she believes that she is a submissive werewolf, which her current pack has convinced her basically means she's the lowest of the low. She's incredibly mistreated. She's abused. It's really bad. Until Charles, who is the son of like the head werewolf of of the world, more or less, comes to town and discovers right away, no, you're not submissive, you're an omega, which what that means is she's sort of like outside of the pack hierarchy. She is someone who makes the werewolves completely at peace with themselves, where werewolves are generally, their aggression's kind of on the surface. Anna brings them down. Anna calms them. She's actually something to be prized. So in the short story, Charles basically gets her out of the abusive situation. They fall in love, and that's where Cry Wolf picks up. So the two of them are coming together in her world, or his world. She's sort of learning to trust the werewolves, where her entire experience has been really, incredibly abusive. But now she's with him, and his job in the werewolf pack is he's basically like he's a one-man law enforcement team, more or less. His job is to enforce the rules. So when he gets called out to go after a rogue werewolf, she goes with him because her abilities as Omega may be able to calm that werewolf, kind of figure out what's going on. So Cry Wolf is it's a love story, obviously, between Charles and Anna, but there's also sort of mystery with this rogue werewolf, what's going on. This book is something that is totally in my wheelhouse, and that it's werewolves and supernatural creatures and magic, but there's some love here, and you have these incredibly awesome characters. You have Anna, who is discovering that she's so much stronger than she ever knew she was. You have Charles, who's a very stoic, serious, he's, like I said, like a one-man law enforcement, and she brings out this playfulness in him, and she's making him realize that he doesn't have to always be super serious and super like rigid, and they absolutely bring out the best in each other. And this is just an awesome series, and if you like Mercedes Thompson as well, this is one you definitely should read in tandem. Like I said, it's kind of fun. They go in and out with some of the same characters, but you definitely can read this on your own. And if you like werewolves, this is a great series and a good place to start.
Excellent. Thank you, Jen. And now I will share my romantic reads. And for those of you who know me, I do not tend to read romance. There's pretty much one type of romance, though, that I will pick up, and that is an over-the-top, drama-filled, soapy, twisty, terrible things are happening to people, and it's got a little bit of comedy in it. Completely anachronistic Regency romance. You're not going to learn any history here, but you're going to have a lot of fun. And that is what Reputation by Lex Croucher is. So here we are. It's the Regency era, sort of-ish. And Georgiana Ellers has been forced to move in with her dreadfully dull and definitely not wealthy aunt and uncle. Her parents have abandoned her, and now she's on her own, and she is of an age where she is supposed to be finding a husband and going out into society and doing the things that proper girls are supposed to do, but her aunt and uncle don't have a lot of money, so they don't really have a way to really get her in there. And the first thing they take her to is this sensationally boring look at a work of art that's not particularly interesting, and it's filled with people who are much older than her, and Georgiana is sure that her future is ruined. But of course, she goes to this party and she meets Frances Campbell, who is uber wealthy and filled with all the drama that you could want, because Frances is going to do all the things. She is going to be drinking. There are going to be drugs. There's going to be lovers. There's going to be drama. She's going to be with people she shouldn't be with. She's going to do all the things. And she pretty much makes Georgiana her pet for the season. This is sort of good for Georgiana because, one, she's desperately lonely and she would like friends. And Frances gets her into her group of friends. It also means she's going to be meeting some eligible young men, but she also sees the dark side of this particular group of people. They take life-threatening risks. They are often cruel to each other, and they don't seem to have a lot of empathy for anyone around them. And it becomes exhausting and sometimes frightening for Georgiana. And she ends up having to make a choice about who she is and what her reputation really means to her. So it was a fun read. Is it going to change your life? No. But if you're the sort of person who's like, let's give me some drama, pick this one up. Recognize that it is not historically accurate. There are definitely modern perspectives happening on things that take place. But, you know, it was a fun read. I think I read it in a weekend and I enjoyed it. So drama-filled romance, pick this one up. The other title I picked up because it actually has won some awards for its art, and that is Lore Olympus. Lore Olympus started as what is apparently referred to as a webtoon, and I had never heard of a webtoon until I picked this up. But you can actually read all of Lore Olympus at no cost on the Webtoon website, and it's presented as episodes, and there's currently, I don't know, over 200 episodes. And this one was popular enough that it was picked up by a publisher. And so volume 1 contains episodes 1 through 25 of Lore Olympus. So clearly there's a lot more to the story. There are currently 3 volumes that have been published. So assuming they all contain around 25 volumes, you're not even halfway through what Rachel Smythe has put together so far. So Lore Olympus focuses on the Greek mythological story of Persephone and Hades. I know next to nothing about Greek mythology. I don't know if I just wasn't awake during that class when they taught it or they just never taught it, but I know next to nothing of Greek mythology. So I went in knowing that Hades was the god of the underworld, and that was kind of it. So I went in not knowing a whole lot, and I still found it very easy to follow along. What Rachel does with her art is she tends to give each god or goddess a specific color. So Hades is always drawn in this blue color that makes you feel like you're kind of in a very cool underworld. Persephone is almost always pink because she's got spring and she's warm and fluffy, and they refer to her in the book as the embodiment of a cinnamon roll. She's just sweet and tasty, and you just want to pick her up and squeeze her. So you've got Persephone, and then Hades' brothers, Zeus and Poseidon. Zeus is purple, Poseidon is green. And this is a very modern take on the Greek mythology. Greek mythology has a whole lot of terrible things happening in it with absolutely no repercussions for those who are doing the terrible things. Looking at you, Zeus and Poseidon, and Hades. they managed to kind of get around the kidnapping of Persephone in a way that makes it not Hades' fault at all. So there's a lot of kind of shifting of that. So if you're very much a traditionalist with your Greek mythology, this isn't for you. But if you want a good story with some really beautiful illustrations and a lot of humor, pick this one up. I did put together a couple of the pictures that really stood out to me. The first one, this is a full page spread of one of the first times that Persephone meets Hades. So Hades is our god in blue there. And this is Persephone when she is being sniffed at and inspected by Cerberus, who is Hades' dog and guardian of the underworld. And I really liked this picture for the white space it has, for the power, but yet gentleness that you see in Hades. And then we learn that Hades doesn't just have one dog. Hades loves dogs, and this made me so happy. So Hades also has an adorable poof ball called Cordon Bleu. This dog that, he's expecting and giving him some loves called Mushroom. Russell, who's clearly a troublemaker and has ripped up some of Hades' coats. JP, who had to go in and get a cone on for unknown reasons. Fudge, which is also another little puffball. Big John, who I don't know why Hades is holding that dog, but that is adorable, that dog's face. And then Cerberus. So I don't know, this just made me laugh and laugh, because who doesn't want to love a guy that also loves dogs? So there's a lot of little things in there like that. I have no idea if that has any reference to actual Greek mythology at all. I don't know if they were in Greek mythology, they were like, and Hades loved dogs. I have no idea, but I really enjoyed it. The story has enough twists and turns that it's enjoyable. I would say you could give it to an older teenager. Be aware that there is some language in it. There's definitely some partying in it. And there is a point where Persephone meets Apollo, and Apollo is awful. And there is a scene in there in which consent is definitely an issue. And it is clear in the book that this is a problem. They aren't presenting it as okay. You also get in the first volume a little bit of the story of Eros and Psyche. So I learned a lot of Greek mythology. I had a good time doing it. The art has this very sort of retro 60s feel combined with some manga. So it was really enjoyable. I read it in probably a couple hours. It doesn't take long. It's a fun read. And I learned a little something. So I'll take it. And Hades is, very much a good guy in the book so far. So 2 thumbs up for a good guy for Persephone. So thank you to all of you once again for sharing your titles for Read a Romance Month here in August. Thank you to those who have listened. And next time, August happens to be American Adventures Month as well. So next time we're going to be sharing books about American adventures. So make sure to join us then. Thanks again for listening. Bye.